My beloved child, stay with me, because what you are about to hear begins with something that has been hidden beneath the surface for far longer than you realize. Don't look away now. Imagine standing before an ancient door that has remained sealed for years, not because something terrible waits behind it, but because the moment for understanding what it represents had not yet arrived. Tonight, in this cinematic message of spiritual reflection, Archangel Michael stands as a symbol of courage beside that door, and the mystery is not about something outside you. It is about something you have carried through every disappointment, every unanswered question, every lonely evening, and every season when you wondered why your life seemed to be moving more slowly than everyone else's. Only 30 seconds. That phrase may have brought you here, but the real countdown is deeper than a clock. It represents the tiny distance between continuing to see your past as wasted time and finally recognizing what those years may have been building inside you. Stay till the end, because the meaning of the sealed door changes completely once you understand what was hidden behind it. For years, you may have looked at certain chapters of your life and asked why nothing happened when you needed it most. You waited for an opportunity that never seemed to arrive. You hoped someone would recognize your value, yet they overlooked you. You tried to remain strong while quietly wondering whether your prayers, your patience, your sacrifices, and your private tears meant anything at all. There were moments when you smiled around people while carrying questions nobody could see. There were nights when the room became quiet and your thoughts became loud. You replayed conversations. You imagined different outcomes. You wondered what would have happened if one person had stayed, if one opportunity had opened, if one decision had gone differently. You may even have thought that the silence itself was an answer. But stay with me. What comes next changes everything, because sometimes silence does not mean emptiness. Sometimes a chapter appears empty only because its meaning becomes visible later. Think about a seed beneath the soil. From above, nothing seems to be happening. There is no applause underground. Nobody celebrates the first invisible root. Nobody sees the tiny movements occurring beneath the darkness. Yet something is happening. Something is preparing itself to rise. And perhaps that image speaks to the years you thought were meaningless. Something huge is waiting for you. Not necessarily in the form of instant riches, impossible guarantees, or a magical event at midnight, but in the possibility that you are finally ready to recognize what those years produced within you. Don't skip. There is another layer. Imagine that sealed door again. Across its surface are symbols representing every year you almost gave up. One symbol belongs to the year you trusted someone and learned discernment. Another belongs to the year you lost something and discovered endurance. Another represents the season when you had very little certainty but continued moving anyway. Another represents the moment when you stopped begging certain people to understand you. Another represents the day you realized that being delayed was not the same as being defeated. Each symbol looks separate until suddenly a line of light passes through them, connecting every mark. That is when the picture changes. The hidden thing was never simply an object waiting somewhere for you. The hidden thing may be the meaning connecting everything you survived. Your answer is closer than you think. There are experiences you once called rejection that may have redirected you. There are endings you once called disasters that may have prevented you from building your entire future around something unstable. There are lonely seasons that may have forced you to discover who you were when nobody was validating you. There are delays that may have developed patience you could never have learned through immediate success. Stay with me, because this is where the story begins. The door does not open because the clock strikes midnight. It opens symbolically when you become capable of looking backward without allowing yesterday to imprison tomorrow. And tonight, the image of Archangel Michael carries a sword of light, not as a weapon of fear, but as a symbol of clarity cutting through confusion. One movement, and the old belief that you were forgotten begins to split apart. Another movement, and the belief that your slow season meant you were failing begins to fall away. Another, and the belief that everyone else's timeline should determine yours loses its power. Don't look away now. You have compared yourself enough. You have watched people announce victories while you were quietly rebuilding. You have watched doors open for others while yours remained closed. You have wondered why people who seemed less prepared moved ahead while you remained in the waiting room of your own life. But what if comparison has prevented you from seeing the evidence already surrounding you? Look at who you were several years ago. Look at what used to destroy your peace immediately. Look at the conversations you once tolerated. Look at the approval you once chased. Look at the things you thought you could never survive. Yet you are here. Changed. Perhaps tired, perhaps still uncertain, but carrying knowledge you did not possess before. That is part of what has been hidden from you. You kept searching for evidence of transformation in your circumstances while transformation was occurring inside your character. Stay till the end. The sealed door is beginning to move. At first, only a thin line of light appears. You expect something enormous behind it, something spectacular enough to explain every painful year instantly. But instead, you hear silence. And within that silence comes realization. The treasure behind the door is not a prediction telling you exactly what tomorrow will contain. It is something more useful, the understanding that your future does not have to repeat your past. Something powerful changes when a person finally understands this. The old rejection no longer controls every new relationship. The old failure no longer defines every new attempt. The old disappointment no longer becomes evidence that disappointment is inevitable. You stop entering tomorrow carrying yesterday like a prophecy. Don't skip, because this is the emotional twist. You thought something had been hidden from you. Perhaps what was truly hidden was how much strength had already been placed within your journey. You kept waiting for proof that your life was changing while overlooking the person you were becoming. You kept waiting for someone to return and validate your worth, but perhaps the deeper breakthrough begins when you no longer require their return to know your value. You kept waiting for the perfect sign, while your persistence itself had become a sign of how far you had traveled. And now the symbolic seal cracks further. The room fills with light. Every memory you once wished you could erase appears like pages suspended in the air. You reach toward one of them. It contains the moment someone underestimated you. Another contains the day an opportunity disappeared. Another contains the night you cried quietly because you were exhausted from pretending everything was fine. Another contains a prayer spoken when you had no idea what would happen next. Stay with me. None of these pages disappears. Instead, they begin rearranging themselves. Suddenly the story no longer reads, "Nothing worked for me." It reads, "I continued." It no longer reads, "Everyone abandoned me." It reads, "I learned who could walk beside me." It no longer reads, "I wasted years." It reads, I became someone those years could teach. What comes next changes everything. The final page remains blank. That blank page is frightening at first because you want certainty. You want names, dates, outcomes, guarantees. You want to know exactly what is coming through the next door. But perhaps the blank page is not punishment. Perhaps it is freedom. Your past has already been written, but tomorrow has not. Something huge is waiting for you in that realization. You still have choices. You still have a voice. You still have the ability to begin again. And the person who begins again now is not the same person who began years ago. You know more. You recognize patterns sooner. You understand boundaries differently. You know that every invitation is not an opportunity, every closed door is not a tragedy, every delay is not rejection, and every person who walks away does not take your future with them. The countdown continues symbolically, 30 seconds between the old interpretation and the new one. 29. The belief that you are behind begins weakening. 28. The belief that your best days belong to the past begins losing its hold. 27. The voice telling you nothing will change becomes quieter. 26. You remember something you once wanted desperately but are now grateful you never received. 25. You realize there may be other unanswered questions whose meaning you simply cannot see yet. Stay with me. 24. You remember how many times you thought you had reached the end, only to discover another road. 23. You recognize that survival itself has taught you things comfort never could. 22. You stop demanding that every difficult chapter explain itself immediately. 21. You begin allowing possibility back into your imagination. Don't look away now. 20. The sealed door opens another inch. And behind it, you see something unexpected, a mirror. You were expecting a secret document, a mysterious name, perhaps some enormous external revelation. Instead, the mirror reflects you. But the reflection is different. It shows every version of you that carried you here. The younger you who believed everyone. The wounded you who learned caution. The exhausted you who kept going. The hopeful you who refused to disappear completely. The wiser you standing here now. All of them exist within that reflection. And suddenly you understand why the door could not have opened in the same way years ago. You would have searched behind it for someone else. You would have asked which person was coming, which opportunity would save you, which external event would prove you mattered. But now you can look into the mirror and understand that no single person gets to decide your worth. No single closed door gets to define your destiny. No single difficult year gets to summarize your entire life. Your answer is closer than you think. It has been growing quietly through every chapter you thought was empty. And the countdown has not finished yet. 19. Something shifts in the atmosphere of this symbolic scene. The mirror disappears, and beyond it appears a long corridor lined with doors. Some are open. Some remain closed. Some have names you recognize from your past, while others carry no names at all. Stay till the end, because the unlabeled doors matter most. You walk toward the first familiar door. It represents something you once begged to keep. Perhaps a relationship, a friendship, a dream, an identity, or a version of life you thought you absolutely needed. Your hand reaches toward the handle, but something within you hesitates. You realize you no longer want what you once begged not to lose. Think about that. There are things you once considered essential that would no longer fit the person you have become. There are conversations you once waited desperately to receive that would no longer impress you. There are people whose approval once controlled your mood who no longer possess that authority. There are environments you once dreamed of entering that you might now recognize as too small for your peace. What comes next changes everything. 18. You pass that door without opening it. 17. Another door carries the word regret. Behind it live all the imaginary lives you could have lived if you had made different decisions. You almost open it. Then you realize regret has a strange habit. It shows you the benefits of the road not taken while hiding its costs. It lets you imagine the perfect version of what could have happened without showing you the struggles that alternative path might have contained. Don't skip. 16. You walk past regret. 15. The next door is marked, why? This one is heavy. You have stood before it many times. Why did they leave? Why did it take so long? Why did that plan collapse? Why did you have to learn that lesson through pain? Why did other people seem to receive easily what you fought to obtain? You place your hand on the door, expecting an answer to every question. But when it opens, there is no explanation written inside. There is only another path forward. This is where the story begins. Sometimes moving forward arrives before understanding. Sometimes peace begins not when every question is answered, but when you decide unanswered questions will no longer stop your life. 14. The corridor becomes brighter. 13. You approach an unlabeled door. Something huge is waiting for you. There is no promise written across it. No guarantee. No countdown engraved into the wood. It simply represents possibility. The unknown once terrified you because you associated uncertainty with loss. But uncertainty also contains beginnings you cannot yet imagine. Every person you now know was once someone you had never met. Every skill you possess was once something you could not do. Every place you have visited was once somewhere you had never been. Every meaningful chapter began as an unknown page. Stay with me. 12. You touch the unlabeled door. 11. It opens. 10. And suddenly the corridor disappears entirely. You find yourself beneath a vast night sky filled with stars. The symbolism becomes unmistakable. For years, you thought darkness meant absence, yet darkness is precisely what allows certain lights to become visible. Had the sky remained bright forever, you might never have noticed the stars. In the same way, there are qualities you may never have discovered within yourself if life had always been easy. Your patience became visible when waiting became necessary. Your courage became visible when certainty disappeared. Your compassion deepened when you understood pain personally. Your discernment sharpened when appearances disappointed you. Your gratitude became more meaningful after seasons when little felt guaranteed. Don't look away now. 9. A single star appears brighter than the others, not because it is necessarily closer, but because your attention has finally settled upon it. Perhaps that is another message hidden within the years: attention shapes experience. When your attention lives permanently on what is missing, life begins to feel like one endless absence. When your attention includes what remains, what has grown, what can still be built, and what can still be learned, the same life begins to contain possibility again. 8. The symbolic figure of Archangel Michael appears beneath that night sky, not bringing a lottery ticket, not handing you a guaranteed prediction, but holding the broken seal from the ancient door. Across the seal is one word, ready. And that word carries the mystery. Maybe what was hidden for years could only become useful once you were ready to understand it differently. Information without maturity can become confusion. Opportunity without preparation can become pressure. Attention without identity can become dependence. Success without wisdom can become another kind of prison. But experience changes the person receiving the opportunity. Stay till the end. 7. You remember the times you asked for immediate change. You wanted everything fixed at once. You wanted the difficult person transformed, the closed door opened, the financial pressure removed, the uncertainty erased. You wanted relief, understandably. But while circumstances moved slowly, another process may have been occurring. You were learning how to stand without immediate reassurance. 6. You realize you are no longer asking exactly the same questions. Years ago, perhaps you asked, "Why doesn't anyone choose me?" Now you may ask, "Does this connection deserve access to my peace?" Years ago, perhaps you asked, "How can I make everyone understand me?" Now you may ask, "Why am I exhausting myself explaining my heart to someone committed to misunderstanding it?" Years ago, perhaps you asked, "What if I fail?" Now another question becomes possible. What if I never discover what I can become because I was too afraid to begin? Your answer is closer than you think. 5. The night sky begins changing toward dawn. But before the first light appears, something strange happens. Every star disappears. For one brief moment, everything becomes completely dark. You might assume something has gone wrong. Yet this is the moment immediately before the horizon changes. 4. Stay with me. This is the point where many people turn backward because the old world is familiar and the new one is still invisible. Familiar pain can sometimes feel safer than unfamiliar possibility. A person may return to patterns they know simply because uncertainty demands courage. But you have already walked too far through this symbolic corridor to pretend you have learned nothing. 3. The horizon begins glowing. The seal in Archangel Michael's hand dissolves into light. The door behind you disappears. There is no need to return to it because its purpose was never to trap you inside a mystery. Its purpose was to bring you to this understanding. 2. Don't skip. The powerful thing hidden from you for years is finally becoming clear. It was not necessarily a secret fortune, a hidden stranger, or an external miracle scheduled for a particular minute. It was the realization that the years you thought had stolen everything from you also gave you something: perspective. You know what you will no longer accept. You know what emptiness feels like, so genuine presence matters differently. You know what uncertainty feels like, so stability means more. You know what being overlooked feels like, so you can recognize people who truly see you. You know what starting over feels like, so another beginning no longer frightens you in quite the same way. 1. And now the countdown ends, but the story does not. That is the twist. Midnight was never meant to frighten you. It is the ancient symbol of one day ending and another beginning. A threshold. A line between what has already happened and what has not yet been written. Something huge is waiting for you on the other side of that line, not certainty, but possibility. Not a guarantee that everything will become easy, but the knowledge that difficulty has not erased your capacity to continue. Not proof that every wish will appear immediately, but permission to stop treating delay as evidence that your life has been forgotten. What comes next changes everything because the countdown has reached 0, yet nothing disappears. Instead, something appears: choice. You can carry the old interpretation into another day, or you can allow a new interpretation to begin. You can continue telling yourself those years were stolen, or you can recognize the wisdom you refused to leave behind. You can continue waiting for someone else to declare you worthy, or you can begin making decisions that reflect the worth you already know you possess.